My name is Zoe Harper, 33, a senior systems engineer in Denver. I've always been good at fixing things. Whether it's a broken algorithm or a broken system, I approach every problem with precision and calm. But the most difficult problem I've ever faced wasn't in any system I could solve with code or logic. It was Matt. Matt, my boyfriend of 2 years, was a dreamer. He had this vision for a luxury wellness brand, something he kept calling his purpose. He was passionate, charming, and convinced he was going to change the world. What I didn't realize was that he was pulling me into this dream without asking me to sign up for the ride. It was a Friday night. I was sitting at the kitchen table, balancing our shared bills, trying to ignore the growing knot in my stomach. The numbers weren't adding up. The bank statement before me was a glaring red flag. $19,000. Gone. Missing from our joint savings account. Matt, I called out, my voice trembling. He was sitting across from me, scrolling through his phone. His flowered shirt was untucked, his posture casual. He didn't even look up. Where's the money? The savings? I don't understand. He shrugged without looking up. I reinvested it in the business. It's going into marketing, branding, the future, Zoe. I stared at him, trying to process. This wasn't the first time he'd dipped into our shared savings for his business, but this was different. I had trusted him, believed in his potential, and never once questioned his judgment. But $19,000 for a business that wasn't even paying its bills? Marketing? I repeated, barely holding it together. You used our savings on branding? His tone shifted, growing defensive. It's an investment, Zoe, a necessary one. Do you have to treat everything like an audit? I'm building something real here, something for us. I wanted to scream at him, to demand answers. But what was the point? He never took me seriously. Not in this way. Not when it came to his dreams. I was just the infrastructure, the silent partner who didn't matter beyond her ability to finance his ideas. You are replaceable, he said then, as casually as if discussing the weather. It was the sharpest blow, one I didn't see coming. You are replaceable, he repeated, almost like it didn't matter to him whether I stayed or not. The words hung in the air, suffocating me. That night, I lay awake, staring at the ceiling, trying to breathe through the feeling of betrayal. I had supported Matt for years. I had quietly funded his dream, paid off the bills when he couldn't meet deadlines, covered his rent when the shop wasn't making enough money, chipped in for supplies when he couldn't afford them, all while pretending we were building something together. I never questioned it, never asked for more. I did it because I loved him. But this was different. This was more than just missing money. This was about control, about using me as a means to an end without considering the toll it was taking on me. The next morning, Saturday, I told Matt I was coming to help him at the shop. He didn't seem surprised, maybe even guilty. But when I arrived, it wasn't the flowers or the orders I was worried about. It was the invoices. Not the usual flower shop invoices, not the kinds that paid for inventory or rent. These were for brand identity, for social media content shoots, for personal development workshops, and for influencer collaborations. There were invoices buried beneath them, overdue ones that weren't getting paid. I stared at the stack, my hands trembling as I picked them up. The shop was in debt. The flowers that were supposed to be there for Monday's orders weren't even stocked. The roses were missing. The peonies. She had promised them to a bride. This wasn't a business. It was a performance. A carefully curated image that couldn't survive without me, without my resources. That night, after I couldn't sleep, I opened Instagram. I never liked social media, but tonight felt different. Matt had rebranded the entire business. The shop's account was no longer about the flowers. It was about him, about his image, about his carefully constructed aesthetic. His new bio read, Matt Bloom, lifestyle and wellness for those who deserve more. His Instagram feed was full of him, in expensive outfits, holding bouquets like they were accessories, crafting a persona that had nothing to do with the actual work of running a business. And I realized for the first time that I wasn't just helping him build a business. I was building his image, and my role? I was just the backdrop. I couldn't let it go. I couldn't pretend it was fine anymore. So I did what anyone would do when they had nothing left to lose. I started an experiment, a project. I called it Project Wilt. If I was replaceable, then I'd test what happened if I stopped watering the flower shop. What happens when you remove the person who has been feeding the dream all along? I wasn't doing this out of revenge. I was doing it out of curiosity, Scientific method. Establish baseline. Remove variable. Observe results. The next day, I took the first step. I withdrew my name from all the bills I'd been covering, the utilities, the suppliers, the insurance. I didn't sabotage anything. I just stopped holding it together. Matt didn't notice at first. He was too busy posting his rebranded images and marketing his success. But the cracks had started to form, and I was waiting to see just how far they would stretch. I woke up Monday feeling strangely calm, the kind of calm that comes from finally letting the truth settle. For 2 years, I had been the one silently tightening the bolts, keeping Matt's dream from collapsing. But now, with Project Wilt underway, I needed to understand the full extent of the structural damage I had unknowingly supported. My first stop was Mrs. Patel, the landlord of Matt's studio. The business was under Matt's name, but somehow the lease guarantor line carried mine. I didn't remember agreeing to that, which meant Matt must have slipped it in during some paperwork rush moment. Typical. Mrs. Patel listened quietly as I requested to withdraw as guarantor. She didn't ask questions, didn't pry. She knew trouble when she saw it. "I will notify him," she said simply. "He will have 30 days to find a new guarantor or renegotiate." Her calm professionalism stung a little. It made me realize how many people Matt had been leaning on without their knowledge. Next, I combed through my email, a graveyard of automated receipts. Every bill, every subscription, every vendor invoice, all connected to me. Without hesitation, I removed my name from each of them. Utilities for the studio? Change back to business-only accounts. Supplier credit I had extended? Email sent. I am no longer authorizing additional credit. Insurance? Please remove Matthew Carter from my plan effective immediately. Again, no sabotage, just no more life support. Matt, meanwhile, floated through the week like nothing was wrong. Monday, he posted a video showcasing his new brand direction. Tuesday, an Instagram reel about cutting dead weight to elevate your life. I didn't need to guess who he meant. I didn't comment. I didn't even feel the urge to. But karma didn't wait long. Wednesday afternoon, an email arrived in our shared household inbox. One Matt had linked to the studio as a backup contact without asking. Subject: account on hold. Outstanding balance. $6,200. It was from his floral wholesaler. No payment, no deliveries, no supplies, no flowers. I heard the muffled panic through the wall as Matt called them from the bedroom. First, the charm voice. "You know I always pay. This is just a temporary." Then the frustration. "This isn't fair. I have a huge order this weekend." Finally, desperation. I need those deliveries, please." But wholesalers are not swayed by desperation. Policy is policy. No pay, no pedals. I made dinner that night while listening to him scrambling through options. He drove to 3 retail stores the next morning, buying cheap flowers at a markup. Flowers meant for homeowners, not weddings. The arrangement still turned out pretty. He's talented, no denying that. But instead of profit, he made maybe $200. A job worth $2,000 evaporated into fumes. That night, he made a long Instagram story rant about supply chain issues hurting small business owners. Comments flooded in with sympathy. No one knew the supply chain issue was simply non-payment. Thursday evening, Matt's cousin, an influencer with 50,000 followers, posted a huge collaboration announcement featuring his brand. It should have been a breakthrough moment, but the comments told a different story. I emailed twice about my order. No response. "You took my deposit last month and canceled delivery. Is this business legit?" Matt spent hours deleting comments, blocking users, spinning excuses. But damage spreads fast online. The post was gone by midnight. Friday morning, the real blow landed. Mrs. Patel showed up at our apartment. Matt tried to act composed, but his eyes darted nervously. I stayed in the kitchen, pretending to make coffee while listening. "Matthew, your guarantor has withdrawn," she explained. "To keep the lease, I need 2 months' rent as security or a new guarantor by next Friday." Zoe can cover it," he blurted. My grip tightened around the mug. Mrs. Patel responded firmly. "She has withdrawn. Please find another solution." When she left, he turned to me, face tight. "Can you just cover it until I sort things out?" I looked at him slowly. I thought I was replaceable. His face changed instantly. anger, fear, then something harder. So this is punishment? No, I said quietly. I'm just not participating anymore. That's the same thing. No, Matt, it's really not. He stormed out, slamming the door. Sunday evening, I heard his voice through the thin apartment walls, frantic, begging someone, likely his cousin, for a loan. Words like betrayal, jealousy, and people who can't handle strong entrepreneurs floated through the air. I almost laughed. Not because it was funny. It wasn't. But because I finally saw the absurdity with clear eyes. I had carried this man for 2 years. I was his financial crutch, his stability, his unseen engine. And all this time, he'd been convinced I was the one clinging to him. On Monday morning, the situation went from personal to dangerous. "Zoe," my coworker Eric whispered as he approached my desk, "I need to show you something." He turned his monitor toward me. A vendor proposal, professionally formatted, branded with my company's internal design. The vendor? Matt's brand. The proposal claimed. He had insider corporate connections. He had access to event calendars. He already had established relationships with decision makers. All lies. Worse, he used my corporate email, my employee discount codes, my calendar, and possibly my laptop templates to create it. Eric's voice was low. "Compliance is opening a conflict of interest review. You need to see this before they come to you." My stomach turned. Matt hadn't just used my money. He used my identity, my career, my reputation. I sent a short email to compliance. "I did not authorize this vendor proposal. The vendor accessed my information without permission. I do not endorse this relationship." The proposal was rejected within a day. Misrepresentation, unauthorized materials, case closed. But the consequences, they were just beginning. A local business networking group posted a warning. "Beware vendors falsely claiming corporate partnerships." Suppliers commented, screenshots appeared, bounce checks, broken promises, debt. A wildfire of truth. Matt's brand wasn't just collapsing, it was disintegrating. And there was nothing left holding it up. The truth had started to spread, and with it came the consequences. Matt had always thought of himself as the orchestrator, the visionary behind his brand. But now, with everything unraveling, he couldn't stop the tide of negative press, angry vendors, and worst of all, the damage to his professional credibility. I watched from the sidelines, detached, as he tried desperately to keep things afloat. He showed up at the apartment late one night, his face drawn, the usual confident gleam in his eyes replaced by frustration and panic. "I can fix this," he muttered to no one in particular, pacing around the living room. "I just need more time. I just need to get one more deal, one more big opportunity." But the truth was, the foundation had already cracked, and the more Matt tried to patch things up, the more everything he touched fell apart. By midweek, Matt's social media was spiraling. His Instagram, once filled with curated, polished images of his luxury wellness brand, was now a battlefield. Comments on his posts went from praising his inspiration to attacking his business ethics. People began to ask why they had never received the products they'd paid for. Others pointed out his fake influencer collaborations. I stayed silent, watching the chaos unfold. This was the world Matt had built, a house of cards made of smoke and mirrors. I hadn't destroyed it. I had simply stopped pretending it was real. Thursday night, he came to me, his face pale. He didn't have to say anything. The devastation was written all over him. "Why are you doing this?" he asked quietly, his voice raw. I didn't feel sorry for him. I didn't feel anything anymore. "You're right," I said coldly. "I'm not the one who destroyed it, Matt. I just stopped holding it up." His eyes widened. "You're supposed to be on my side. You're my partner." "I was never your partner," I shot back. "I was your infrastructure. You never once asked for my opinion or even considered my feelings. I was just a resource. You used me. My money, my connections, my career. And for what? To build a brand that wasn't even real?" I could see it then, the guilt flashing in his eyes, but it was too late. The following morning, Matt received an email that would be the final blow. The Denver Bridal Expo, the one event he had been counting on for months, had bounced his booth payment in front of potential customers. He called me in the afternoon, his voice tight with panic. "Zoe, they've canceled my booth. They're kicking me out. I need you to help me figure this out." I didn't even respond. I just hung up. I had done enough. I spent the next few hours walking through the city, taking time to breathe. The world felt different, lighter. every step I took, I felt the weight of the past months lift off me. I didn't need to carry his failures anymore. When I returned home, the apartment felt like a different space. Quiet, peaceful. It was a stark contrast to the constant tension of the past 2 years. Later that week, a new crisis hit Matt. His business partners and suppliers were pulling out, fast. They had all heard the rumors. Vendors, photographers, influencers, they had all started to back away. But Matt, true to form, blamed me. "You did this, Zoe," he shouted one evening, his voice dripping with venom. "You turned everyone against me. You're the one who made this public." "No, Matt," I said, standing tall. "You did this to yourself. You built this house of cards. And I'm not the one who made it fall. You leveraged my career, my professional relationships, and my credit. I never asked for any of this." He looked at me like he didn't recognize me anymore. But the truth was, I hadn't recognized myself in a long time. The woman who would stay up late at night, quietly helping him fix his mistakes, had vanished. The woman who let herself be overshadowed by his dreams, gone. I was no longer his support system. I was no longer his infrastructure. Friday evening, I came home to find Matt packing. His things were scattered across the living room, a suitcase half full, his phone buzzing incessantly with messages I didn't care to read. "You're really going to leave?" I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. "I have no choice," he said, his voice tight. "Everything's falling apart. You can't just let it all burn, Zoe." I didn't respond. There was nothing left to say. As Matt packed up the final remnants of his failed dream, I felt a strange sense of calm. This wasn't victory. It wasn't even closure. It was simply the end. The end of a chapter I had never fully belonged to in the first place. The next few weeks felt like a blur. Matt moved out, his business officially folded, and I was left to pick up the pieces of my life, the life that had been put on hold for so long. Matt didn't reach out after he left. Not to apologize, not to explain. He was busy salvaging what was left of his image. He posted about his journey, about his rebirth as an entrepreneur. But I wasn't paying attention anymore. I had moved on. The weeks after Matt left were quieter than I ever imagined. I found a strange sense of peace in the solitude. But beneath that calm, something had shifted. I was no longer the woman who'd been tangled in someone else's ambitions. I was Zoe Harper, and I was starting to figure out what that meant. But Matt wasn't done yet. A month after he moved out, I received a message from an unexpected source. Marcy, Matt's cousin, the influencer with 50,000 followers, had posted something vague on Instagram. It was one of those cryptic posts about cutting toxic people out of your life and growing stronger from the struggle. Her followers immediately connected the dots. Matt's fall. At first, I didn't give it much thought, but the next day, I received a direct message from her. "Hey, Zoe, I know this may be a weird time, but Matt's asking for help. I thought you should know he's trying to rebuild. He's saying he made some big mistakes, and he's really sorry." I didn't respond. I didn't need to. Matt had made his choices. He didn't just fall from grace because of a few bad decisions. He'd created a whole network of lies. He used my career, my reputation, my money, and then discarded me when he no longer needed me. There was no apology big enough to fix that. But Marcy didn't stop there. She reached out again a few days later, her tone more urgent. "Zoe, listen. Matt really needs to know that he's not alone in this. He's struggling. He's talking about leaving town. I don't know if he'll make it." It was as if she was trying to manipulate me into feeling sympathy for him, like I was still tied to the mess he had created. I wasn't. Still, I couldn't shake the feeling that Matt wasn't done trying to drag me back into his world. I'd seen this before, the grand apologies, the promises of change. But I knew better now. It wasn't until I received a formal letter from his attorney that I realized Matt hadn't truly learned anything. The letter was a warning that he planned to sue me for the money he'd lost. Apparently, he was blaming me for the collapse of his brand, claiming that I had sabotaged his business by withdrawing financial and emotional support. I couldn't help but laugh as I read the letter. He was still trying to make me the villain, even after everything had unfolded. I forwarded the letter to my lawyer, who immediately laughed it off. "It's just a way for him to stay in the story. He's grasping at straws, Zoe. Don't let it get to you." That was the moment it hit me. Matt was always going to be the same. He wasn't capable of seeing how deep his mistakes went. For him, everything was someone else's fault. A week later, I received another message from Matt. But this time it was different. It wasn't a social media post. It wasn't a call for sympathy or a direct request for help. It was a simple email addressed to me, the first direct communication since he'd left. I opened it hesitantly. Subject, for what it's worth. Zoe, I've thought a lot about everything that happened, and I want to say something I should have said earlier. I was wrong. I never realized how much I took you for granted. You were right about everything. I used you. I used your career, your money, your connections, without ever really appreciating you. And I said something I can never take back. You weren't replaceable. You were essential. I've lost that, and I don't know if I'll ever be able to fix it. I don't expect forgiveness. I just need you to know that I understand now. I didn't build a business. I built an image. And that was all on me. I hope you find what you're really looking for. Matt. I stared at the email for a long time. There it was. The apology I had been waiting for. Not the grand gestures, not the empty promises, but a simple, raw acknowledgement of everything he had done. And then I realized something important. It didn't matter anymore. Matt's email wasn't closure. It wasn't a chance for me to go back and fix things. It was simply the last thing I needed to finally let go. I spent the next few days reflecting. I didn't need Matt's apology to move on. I didn't need to stay tied to someone who had shown me nothing but selfishness and manipulation. When I walked into the coffee shop a week later and saw Sarah, the woman who had worked with Matt in the last months of his failed business, I had a feeling of calm wash over me. Sarah had been the one quietly handling the logistics, the details that Matt had ignored. She was sitting at a small table, organizing flower arrangements, the shop bright and alive with the scent of fresh blooms. "Zoe," she called, waving me over. "You came in just at the right time. Look at this." She handed me a bouquet, a wild arrangement of garden roses, thistle, and eucalyptus. The perfect combination of wild and structured, real artistry. "I've been thinking about how I want to do things differently now," she said, a smile tugging at her lips. "It's all about knowing what works together, not just what looks good. You can't build something sustainable on aesthetics alone, you know?" I smiled back genuinely. "Yeah, I know," I said softly. "I've learned that the hard way." A few weeks later, I walked past Matt's old flower shop location. The windows were papered over, the sign gone. I heard rumors about a new flower shop opening in the area, but I didn't care. I had moved on. My life was mine again, and I was finally building it for myself. I bought flowers for my apartment, not because I had to, not because it was some grand gesture, just because they made me happy. For the first time in a long time, I was able to breathe without the weight of someone else's dreams crushing me. I watered my flowers carefully, with just the right amount of care, no more, no less. They grew, and so did I. The apartment felt different now, lighter, as if the air itself had finally stopped holding its breath. For months, my life had been tangled in Matt's shadows. His ambitions, his image, his chaos. But standing in my quiet living room now, sunlight filtering through the curtains and settling warmly across the floor, I realized something. This was the first time in years the space actually felt like mine. My mornings changed first. Instead of waking up bracing for emotional turbulence, I woke up slowly, peacefully. I brewed coffee without rushing. I played music, sometimes jazz, sometimes indie acoustic. Things I loved, but had quietly abandoned because Matt found them low energy. Now, they were the soundtrack of my mornings. At work, I found myself focusing again, not distracted by constant financial anxiety or fear of what disaster Matt might create next. My team noticed the change before I did. "You look good," Eric said one morning, raising an eyebrow. "Like you finally slept." "I did," I replied simply. But the real shift came months after Matt's departure, when I received a message from Sarah. Sarah, Matt's former assistant, had opened her own shop, a small, humble flower studio called Wild and Rooted. People loved it, real, grounded, authentic, everything Matt's shop had pretended to be. She greeted me with a warm smile when I visited. "Zoe," she said, "I'm glad you came." Wild and Rooted was the opposite of Matt's meticulously curated aesthetic. It was alive, real. Flowers everywhere, organized neatly, each stem fresh and intentional. This place wasn't trying to perform success. It was quietly becoming it. "I wanted to show you something," Sarah said, guiding me to a table with a beautiful arrangement of deep purple dahlias. "These are yours," she said. "Consider it a thank you for stepping away when you did." I frowned slightly. "What do you mean?" She folded her arms, thoughtful. If you'd stayed and kept funding everything, the crash would have come much later, and much harder. You didn't help him fall, Zoe. You just stopped standing between him and gravity. Her words settled into my chest like the gentle weight of truth. I took the dahlias home, placing them carefully in a vase on my kitchen table. The flowers filled the room with color, vibrant, unapologetically alive. It felt like a metaphor for something I wasn't ready to name yet. A week later, I went to the farmer's market on a bright Saturday morning. The smell of fresh bread and citrus floated through the air, families weaving between stalls, dogs tugging at leashes. I wasn't thinking about Matt. I wasn't thinking about anything, really, just enjoying a peaceful morning. Then I saw him, behind a small booth, selling handmade candles. His shoulders were slightly hunched, hair pulled back, none of the curated, polished glow he used to chase. Instead, he looked real, tired, human. Our eyes met across the market. He stepped forward first. "Zoe!" I swallowed. "Matt." For a long moment, neither of us spoke. The noise of the market swelled around us, life happening all at once. And for the first time, I didn't feel bitterness or anger, just distance, a clean break where something heavy used to sit. "You let it all die," he said softly, not accusing, just wondering. I chose honesty. I stopped pretending it was alive. He flinched but nodded. "Yeah, fair." He glanced back at the candles behind him. "I'm working for one of Marcy's friends now, making these, selling them. It's honest work." "That's good," I said sincerely. "Really." He met my eyes again. For the first time, there was no expectation in his stare, no pressure, no pulling me back into his orbit. "You were right," he admitted, voice low, "about everything. I kept trying to look successful instead of trying to be successful." Silence. "You told me I was replaceable," I said quietly. His face crumpled, not dramatically, not theatrically, just truthfully. That was the worst thing I ever said to anyone. I nodded. "Yeah, it was." "I'm sorry," he whispered. "I know that doesn't fix anything, but I needed to say it." I nodded again. "Thank you." A customer approached his booth. He glanced back. "I should go," he murmured. "Yeah." He hesitated, then added, "I hope you find someone who sees you, not what you can provide." I took a breath. "And I hope you figure out what you actually want to build. Not for an audience, for yourself." He smiled, sad but genuine. "Working on it." And then he was gone, swallowed by the crowd. Just like that. The chapter closed, quietly, cleanly. On the walk home, I stopped by Wild and Rooted again. Sarah smiled when she saw me. "Back so soon?" "I wanted something for myself," I said. "Something bright." She helped me pick a bouquet of tulips and anemones, soft and vibrant. Simple, not trying to be anything other than what they were. "For you?" she asked. "Yeah," I said, "for home." She smiled. "Good choice. Those are the ones that last longest." When I got home, I placed the flowers on my kitchen table next to the deep purple dahlias. The room felt different now, alive, calm, mine. I watered the flowers gently, just what they needed, no more, no less. Time moved forward, quietly, steadily. Life, it seemed, had a way of smoothing out rough edges, of turning the page without asking for permission. Months passed, and I found a rhythm, a peaceful routine built on my own terms. I had let go of Matt, let go of the weight he'd carried for so long, and for the first time in a long while, I could breathe without wondering what kind of mess I'd have to clean up next. But life, as it does, always finds a way to bring things full circle. It was a Saturday afternoon when I ran into Matt again. I was at the grocery store, the kind of place where you mind your business and grab what you need. I didn't expect to see him. Didn't expect to see anyone from that part of my life, really. But there he was, standing in the produce aisle, staring at a stack of avocados like he was trying to figure out his next big move. Our eyes met, and I felt that familiar jolt, that odd mixture of recognition and residual emotion. But it wasn't the old feelings, not anger, not regret, just detachment. He hesitated for a second, then stepped toward me. "Zoe?" he said, his voice unsure, like he didn't quite know where we stood anymore. "Matt," I replied, my tone steady. "It's been a while." He nodded, looking down at his basket. "Yeah, it's weird, all of this. I didn't think I'd ever see you again." I shrugged. "I'm not hard to find. Just living my life." He chuckled softly. "I'm glad to hear that." We stood in awkward silence for a moment, surrounded by the hum of the store. I felt the weight of the past, but it didn't crush me. It didn't consume me the way it used to. Finally, Matt looked up at me, his face drawn but open. I've been thinking a lot about everything, about how I treated you. I didn't interrupt. I didn't feel the need to. I get it now, he said quietly. You were right. I was so focused on building an image, I didn't see what was right in front of me. You. His words hung in the air, heavier than I expected. A confession, an apology. But I didn't need it to feel validated. I don't know what else to say, he continued. I messed up. I know that. I glanced at him, wondering how long it had taken him to truly understand, to see the damage he'd caused. You don't need to say anything, I said softly. You were part of my past, but that's where you belong now, in the past. Matt swallowed, nodding. Yeah, I know. We stood there, the air between us, not heavy, but not light either. It was just real, raw even. Not everything was said, but everything that mattered had already been understood. I hope you figure things out, Matt, I said. For you, not for anyone else. He nodded again, his face tight. I'm trying. Then, before I could say anything else, he walked away. Slowly, quietly. For the first time, I didn't feel the need to chase after him. I didn't need closure. I didn't need to fix him. He was just another person, another chapter in the book of my life. That evening, I went back to my apartment, back to the quiet space I had created. The flowers on the kitchen table, those tulips and anemones, had started to wilt, their petals curling at the edges, but they still looked beautiful, vibrant in their decay. I watered them, gently, just enough. As I stood there, watching the water soak into the soil, I realized something. I wasn't waiting for Matt to make things right anymore. I wasn't waiting for him to apologize or to fix anything. I had already done that for myself. And I was finally learning how to thrive on my own. The next day, I got an email from Sarah. She had a new idea for the business, something about workshops to teach others how to run a flower shop without the fame, how to build a real business. I smiled when I saw it. It wasn't something I'd have considered a year ago, but now, it felt right. It felt like the kind of thing I could put my energy into. Sarah was building something real, not an image, not a facade, but something that would last, something that could grow, and maybe, just maybe, I could help her. I walked into the bright Denver sunlight, feeling that old, familiar sense of possibility. I didn't need Matt to validate me. I didn't need anyone to define my worth. I was Zoe Harper, and I was finally building the life I deserved. For me.